I've learned over the years that the most dangerous predators don't lurk in dark alleyways. They sit across from you at expensive restaurants, wearing tailored charcoal suits and the warmest, most reassuring smiles. That thought crossed my mind as I sat across from Ethan Whitmore at Higgins, an upscale restaurant in downtown Portland, on a rainy Sunday evening. I was watching him charm my daughter with the kind of practiced, effortless confidence that always makes honest men slightly uncomfortable. The restaurant hummed with the ambient noise of Portland's elite dinner crowd, the clinking of crystal wine glasses, the low murmur of negotiations, the rich scent of truffles and roasted garlic. My daughter, Rachel, had chosen this place for our introduction. Neutral ground, public, safe, or so she had thought. "Mr. Sullivan, Rachel has told me so much about you," Ethan said, extending his hand across the white tablecloth. He was 32 years old, tall, with dark, perfectly styled hair, and a suit that undoubtedly cost more than the average person's monthly mortgage. His grip was firm, aggressive, entirely calculated. Everything about him screamed success, everything except his eyes. When he thought no one was watching, they went completely flat, dead like a shark cruising for its next meal. "Please, call me Edward." I kept my smile easy and disarming. Just a retired cafe owner, a harmless old man, that is exactly what he needed to see. My daughter sat beside him, radiant in a burgundy dress. At 34, Rachel had built her cybersecurity startup, CyberShield, entirely from the ground up. She had started in a cramped studio apartment and now managed a rapidly growing team of 15 engineers. She had inherited her late mother Catherine's brilliant intellect and my stubborn, relentless determination. It was a dangerous combination when targeted by the wrong person. "This is Diana Foster." Ethan gestured smoothly to the blonde woman sitting beside him. "She's been mentoring Rachel on business development and strategic growth." Diana leaned forward, her smile warm, enthusiastic, and completely disarming. "Your daughter is exceptional, Mr. Sullivan. We are just so incredibly excited about CyberShield's potential." The server arrived with our appetizers. I had ordered the steelhead trout. Ethan immediately took charge of the charcuterie board, dissecting it with pretentious commentary about each specific aged cheese, a carefully rehearsed performance of sophistication. "So, Edward," Ethan said casually, taking a sip of his Cabernet. "Rachel mentioned you own a cafe in Eastmoreland, Sullivan's Corner, right? Beautiful neighborhood, historic. Those homes must be worth quite a bit of money now." There it was, the very first probe. He was testing the perimeter defenses. Nothing fancy. I waved a hand dismissively, playing the part of the naive, simple father perfectly. "Coffee and pastries. I opened it 5 years ago after I retired. Keeps me busy. You don't want to hear war stories from a former paper pusher." Rachel shot me a quick, subtle glance. She knew I was deflecting, though she only knew half the truth about my past. Ethan smiled, swirling his wine. "That house in the Bybee Boulevard area, what's it appraised at these days? 1.5, 1.6 million? Diana jumped in with a light, melodic laugh, touching Ethan's arm. "Ethan, you're doing it again. Talking real estate at dinner." "I swear, Edward, he sees investment opportunities absolutely everywhere." Speaking of which, Ethan pivoted smoothly to Rachel, pulling out his sleek smartphone. "I finalized the terms with the board today. $2.5 million for 30% equity in CyberShield." Rachel straightened in her chair. I watched the microscopic tension tighten around her eyes. "Your trajectory is highly impressive," Ethan continued, his voice dropping into a hypnotic, authoritative cadence. "You're exactly what Apex Ventures looks for. We manage about 45 million across our portfolio, and we want you in it." But Rachel wasn't smiling. "The equity percentage is higher than we originally discussed." "Ethan, and you mentioned additional terms?" "Standard protective provisions." Ethan's tone remained perfectly confident, but a hard edge crept in. "Given the massive size of the investment, we'd obviously need collateral guarantees. Standard operating procedure. Your South Waterfront condo would work perfectly. 650,000 appraisal, right? And if Edward here would simply co-sign with his Eastmoreland property as additional security, we could fast-track this and close by Friday." The temperature in my chest plummeted to absolute zero. He didn't just want her company, He wanted our homes, both of them. That's, Rachel began, her voice tight, but Diana cut in gently, placing a comforting hand over Rachel's. I know it sounds aggressive, sweetie, but it is standard for Series A rounds, Diana cooed. It's pure formality. Just insurance paperwork for the board. You'll never actually be at risk. I wouldn't steer you wrong. You know that, right? Rachel did know that. Diana had been advising her for 6 months. They had gotten coffee dozens of times. Diana had given her solid, actionable advice. She had become a trusted friend. That is exactly what made her so terrifyingly effective. I watched Ethan watching me. He was quietly calculating whether the old cafe owner would be a problem. I'm flattered, I said slowly, swirling my water glass. But Rachel's business is her domain. I stay in my lane. I make coffee. Of course, Ethan nodded sympathetically. Though families support each other, Edward, this deal would set Rachel up for life. We are talking an 8-figure exit in 3 to 5 years. Rachel's jaw tightened. Can I see the full term sheet? Absolutely. Ethan smiled. I'll have my attorney send it over tonight. He lifted his expensive wine glass to new partnerships. Diana raised hers immediately, her eyes sparkling. Rachel hesitated for a fraction of a second before joining them. I lifted my water glass but didn't drink. Our entrees arrived a moment later as the server set down the plates. Rachel reached for her water glass and deliberately knocked her white linen napkin to the floor between us. Oh, clumsy me, she said lightly. We both bent down to retrieve it at the exact same moment. Under the table, completely out of sight from Ethan and Diana, our hands met. She pressed something small, stiff, and sharp into my palm. A business card. Her eyes locked onto mine for half a second in the shadows under the table. I saw sheer terror and desperate urgency. Then she straightened up, napkin in hand, her polite smile firmly back in place. Thanks, Dad, she chirped. I slipped the card deep into my suit jacket pocket as I sat back up. Ethan was busy explaining a complex tax loophole to Diana. Neither of them had noticed a thing. The rest of the dinner proceeded with superficial conversation. Portland weather, the trailblazers, restaurant recommendations. Ethan told charming, self-deprecating stories. Diana endlessly praised Rachel's brilliance. I smiled, nodded, and played the proud, simple father. But I watched them. I watched how Ethan's hand rested possessively near Rachel's, never quite touching, but establishing physical dominance and territory. I watched how Diana's enthusiasm never faltered, remaining entirely too perfect, too consistent. And I watched how Ethan's eyes tracked other wealthy diners when he thought no one was looking. He wasn't admiring them, he was hunting them. When the check finally came, Ethan forcefully insisted on paying. Consider it the first investment, he said smoothly. Outside, the February rain drummed steadily against the pavement. Ethan shook my hand, his grip tight. I'll see you Friday, Edward. We're going to do great things together. Looking forward to it. I lied effortlessly. Diana hugged Rachel tightly. Call me tomorrow. Sweetie. They disappeared into a sleek black Tesla and pulled away from the curb. Rachel and I stood alone under the restaurant's heavy canvas awning. Drive safe, sweetheart, I said quietly. She hugged me tight, burying her face in my shoulder. Read it tonight, she whispered into my coat. Then she pulled back, smiled brightly for anyone who might be watching from down the street, and walked quickly to her car. I waited until her taillights vanished into the rainy Portland night. The street was busy, but anonymous, couples rushing through the rain, traffic hissing past on the wet asphalt. No one was watching me. I stepped deeper into the shadow of the awning and pulled the business card from my pocket. It was a standard design, Rachel's name, the Cyber Shield logo, her contact information. I turned it over. Written on the back, in her precise, hurried handwriting, were 3 sentences. Dad, help. Trap. Trust no one. The rain drummed louder against the canvas, or maybe that was just my pulse. I drove home through the quiet, rain-slicked streets of Eastmoreland. My house sat dark and empty, the exact way it had been for 5 years. Ever since Catherine passed away, I walked inside, locked the heavy deadbolt, turned on the single kitchen light, and set the card on the granite counter. My daughter was in trouble, real, catastrophic trouble. She was smart enough to know she couldn't say anything openly. She couldn't trust her phone. She couldn't trust her close friend Diana, and she definitely couldn't trust her promising new investor. I thought about Ethan's practiced handshake, his invasive, calculating questions about my net worth, his aggressive demand for our homes as collateral. I thought about Diana's perfectly timed endorsements. And I thought about how quickly they were trying to move. Friday, just 5 days away. Then, I thought about the 7 years I had spent before I decided to open a quiet neighborhood cafe. I thought about the massive federal cases I had prosecuted, the predatory white-collar criminals I had relentlessly hunted and put in federal prison, the behavioral patterns of psychopaths I had learned to recognize from a mile away. Tomorrow morning, Rachel and I needed to talk, really talk, because whoever Ethan Whitmore pretended to be, I knew exactly what he actually was. And I had spent my entire career destroying men exactly like him. I poured myself a black coffee, opened my laptop, and typed a name into the secure search bar. The digital clock on the stove read 9:47 p.m. It was going to be a very long night. I didn't sleep a single minute that night. By 4:30 a.m. on Monday, I was standing in the kitchen of Sullivan's Corner, pulling trays of cinnamon rolls from the oven. The dough was Catherine's secret recipe. It had been 5 years since I opened this cafe. 5 years since Catherine's funeral. I needed something physical to fill my days, or the grief would completely consume me. By 6:15 a.m., my morning regulars started trickling in. I ground espresso on autopilot, while my mind violently yearned through everything I had discovered during my midnight research. Ethan Whitmore's digital footprint was impressive, entirely too impressive. A polished LinkedIn profile, a flawless website, all of it could be easily manufactured. I had seen it done 100 times before. The brass bell above the door chimed sharply at 6:40 a.m. Rachel stepped inside, shaking the rain from her umbrella. The dark circles under her eyes mirrored my own perfectly. She crossed straight to the counter. I poured 2 black coffees, locked the heavy front door, and flipped the open sign to back in 15 minutes. We sat at the small corner table. Rachel wrapped both hands tightly around her mug. "I need you to know something," she said quietly. "I'm not just a tech founder. For the past 5 years, I've been quietly working as an angel investor on the side. I've deployed $800,000. I blinked, genuinely stunned. How much? 800,000. Returns have been excellent. She showed me a secure spreadsheet. I taught myself, Dad, I wanted to understand the money behind the curtain. A massive wave of pride swelled in my chest. So when Ethan showed up, Rachel swiped aggressively to his term sheet. I knew immediately something was deeply wrong. His clauses are highly illegal. He buried aggressive liquidation preferences that would give him complete operational control at 30% equity. And the collateral requirement. Dad, no legitimate venture capitalist demands personal residential property as collateral. That is financial hostage-taking. How long have you known? I asked softly. 2 weeks. Diana kept pushing me to sign fast. I stalled. I told them I wouldn't sign anything without my father reviewing it first. Her voice cracked. I needed you to see him, Dad. I needed you to tell me if I was just being paranoid. I squeezed her hand. Your mother would be so damn proud of you, Rachel. She straightened her shoulders. The fear vanished, replaced by a hard determination. So, what do? We have to stop them. I took a deep breath. It was time for the truth. Before I opened this cafe, I said slowly, I was an assistant United States attorney. I spent 27 years prosecuting complex financial fraud and major white-collar crime. Rachel stared at me, paralyzed. You were a federal prosecutor. 289 cases, I confirmed, my voice hardening. 87% conviction rate. I put away men who looked exactly like Ethan Whitmore. I retired in 2016 when your mother was diagnosed. When she died, I couldn't go back to that dark world. Last night, I saw it at dinner. Rachel realized. You were interrogating him. You were reading him like a criminal case file. I managed a grim smile. Old habits die hard, and yes, I saw exactly what he is, a predator. Rachel pulled up her phone. There is almost nothing on him before 2018. Name change. Classic pattern for someone running from a prior major fraud investigation, I said. I still have contacts. FBI special agents, securities lawyers, investigative journalists. If Ethan has a dirty history, we will dig it up. What about Diana? Either a clueless victim or a core part of the operation. Either way, we cannot trust her. So what is the plan? I pulled out a small notepad. You keep playing along, stall the signing, but don't make him suspicious. No one can know I used to be a federal prosecutor. Can we stop him? Yes, I said with absolute certainty. But we need to be incredibly smart and exceptionally patient. If we move too fast, he will vanish like smoke. We build an airtight case, and then we drop the hammer all at once. Rachel nodded. I'll text you when I'm at the office. I walked her to the door. I need to make 3 highly sensitive calls. The clock is ticking, and remember, if Ethan figures out we are investigating him, you might be in real, physical danger. He picked the wrong family, Rachel said fiercely, stepping into the rain. Safely tucked in my apron pocket, I had 3 names. Laura Bennett, FBI Financial Crimes Unit, Richard Fitzgerald, Elite Securities Defense Attorney. Andrew Bradford, investigative journalist. The first call went out at 8:15 a.m. on Tuesday. Laura Bennett answered on the second ring. Special Agent Bennett. Laura, it's Edward Sullivan. Absolute silence on the line, Mr. Sullivan. Are you okay? I'm fine, but I need a massive favor. Her tone shifted instantly to professional steel. Name it. I had mentored Laura 19 years ago during a brutal securities fraud prosecution. She was now a senior special agent. I need a deep background check, completely off the books. Ethan Whitmore, 32, claims to run a VC fund called Apex Ventures. What's your interest? Ed, he is targeting my daughter. Investment fraud, Laura said sharply. Exactly. He is pressuring her to sign a deeply predatory deal, requiring both her property and mine as collateral. I need to know if he has done this before. Give me 48 hours. The second call went to Richard Fitzgerald at 9:30 a.m. Edward Sullivan. Richard laughed warmly. Calling because someone is about to have a very bad day? Potentially. I need you to review an investment contract for my daughter's company. Richard's humor evaporated. Send it over right now. Massive liquidation preferences, hostile drag-along provisions, and personal real estate collateral requirements. That is extortion with fancy paperwork, Richard muttered. I am clearing my afternoon. I'll have a full legal analysis by tonight. This one is on the house. Ed, the third call went out at 10:15 a.m. Andrew Bradford, a manic voice answered. Andrew, it's Ed Sullivan. How would you like to investigate a massive potential investment scam? I'm listening. A venture capital firm called Apex Ventures, run by Ethan Whitmore. I need SEC filings, corporate shell structures, past investments. Find me what doesn't add up. Give me a week, Andrew said, his keyboard firing like a machine gun. You have exactly 3 days, even better. Why do I get the feeling this is personal? Ed, because you're a good reporter. I hung up the phone. 3 calls, 3 powerful people I trusted implicitly. 3 different, devastating angles of attack. Now all I had to do was wait for the trap to spring. That evening, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text from Rachel. Date with E went fine. Got everything. I called her immediately, stepping into the privacy of my dark living room. Are you sure he didn't suspect anything? Positive. Rachel's voice was remarkably steady. I played the eager, slightly naive founder perfectly. I asked about the timeline, equity structure, and logistics. He ate it up. How did he react to questions about the collateral? Dad, he is incredibly good. He's charismatic, patient, and he always has a reassuring answer ready. If I didn't know any better, I would completely believe him. But you do know better. Yeah, and I have 47 minutes of secretly recorded conversation proving he is aggressively pressuring me into a financial trap. Pride mixed with cold fear in my chest. I already sent you the encrypted audio file. Dad, when he talked about seizing our homes if the company underperformed, he smiled. Not a friendly smile. It was like he was imagining already owning our property. My grip tightened on the phone. You did brilliantly, sweetheart. Now we wait for the FBI. Laura called on Thursday morning at exactly 6:43 a.m. I was just unlocking the cafe doors. Still half asleep. Ed, we need to talk. I immediately locked the heavy glass door again and retreated to the back office. What did you find? Ethan Whitmore doesn't exist before 2018. Not in any meaningful legal way, but Ethan Morgan. That is a very different story. My pulse quickened. Go on. Legal name change filed in Nevada. March 2018. Before that, Ethan Morgan was a primary person of interest in a massive investment fraud case out of San Francisco. The target was a young tech founder named Sarah Morrison and her father, James. They lost $5 million. Were criminal charges filed? Never, Laura said grimly. By the time the victims realized it was a highly coordinated fraud, Ethan had moved the money into offshore shell accounts and changed his identity completely. What happened to the victims? Laura hesitated. Sarah's father, James Morrison, suffered a massive, fatal heart attack 6 months after they lost absolutely everything. Sarah was too devastated and broke to pursue the legal case further. I closed my eyes, leaning heavily against the office desk. I could see the pattern forming clearly now. Target selection is incredibly precise. I said, my prosecutor brain taking over. Single female founders, tech sector, wealthy fathers willing to co-sign or guarantee investments. He gets close, builds absolute trust, and then structures predatory deals that let him legally seize assets when the companies inevitably fail, which they do because he actively sabotages them from the inside. Exactly, Laura said. What about the woman? Diana Foster. She introduced Ethan to Rachel. She has been mentoring her for 6 months, pushing hard for Rachel to take this deal. Send me her photo right now. I need to run facial recognition. If she is part of his operation, Rachel is surrounded. I pulled up a photo of Rachel and Diana smiling at a coffee shop and forwarded it to Laura. I'll call you back in an hour, Laura promised, hanging up. I sat in the dim cafe, staring at the glowing FBI report on my laptop screen. Ethan Morgan, $5 million stolen, an innocent father dead from a broken heart, and Diana Foster, who had spent 6 grueling months earning my daughter's deep trust, only to steer her directly into Ethan's trap. Rachel called me Friday afternoon, her voice tight with controlled, explosive anger. Dad, Diana Foster didn't exist before last year. I set down the espresso cup I was cleaning. What do you mean? Her entire digital presence, social media, professional networks, business profiles, everything was created in early 2023. March through April, I ran deep reverse image searches on her photos. Nothing. She materialized out of thin air. Business registrations? Diana Foster Consulting was filed in March 2023 to a cheap virtual office address, Rachel said, typing furiously on her end. Dad, she's not real. Diana Foster is a fabricated persona. My pulse began to hammer. Can you dig deeper? Already on it, Saturday morning at 9:47 a.m., Rachel texted me, Dad, call me now. I bolted the cafe door and dialed. I found it. Rachel's voice shook with absolute fury. Clark County, Nevada, marriage license database, public records, found what? Ethan Whitmore got married in June 2021 in Las Vegas. The bride was Melissa Whitmore. My stomach dropped violently. Diana, that's her legal name. Dad, I found the certificate date, the officiant, everything. They are married. They have been running this massive scam together. 30 seconds later, my phone lit up with the screenshot. An official Clark County document, bride, Melissa Whitmore, groom Ethan Whitmore, date, June 15, 2021. The woman who had befriended my daughter over coffee, who had given her brilliant business advice, who had enthusiastically endorsed her own husband's predatory financial scheme, was his wife. Rachel, are you somewhere safe? I'm at home, doors locked, security system on. I forwarded the explosive marriage license directly to Laura Bennett. If they are married, I told Rachel, this isn't just basic investment fraud anymore. This is organized crime, I know, Dad. Andrew Bradford's email arrived on Sunday morning at 6:15 a.m. The subject line read, Apex Ventures Ghost Company. Ed, you were absolutely right. Apex Ventures is a hollow shell. The website domain was registered in 2020. 0 SEC filings, no Form D, no Form ADV. A legitimate $45 million fund would have mountains of regulatory paperwork. Their business address is a virtual office at Brewery Blocks that costs $89 a month. The phone number traces to an untraceable virtual answering service. This venture capital firm doesn't exist. It's an elaborate, expensive stage set. I forwarded Andrew's findings to Laura and Rachel, then stared at the framed photo of Catherine on my living room wall. Watch what they do, not what they say, Catherine used to tell Rachel. Ethan and Melissa had done this before. I was absolutely certain of it now. I went down to my basement and pulled out an old, massive corkboard I hadn't used since my days prosecuting cartels. I pinned the marriage license in the center. I pinned Ethan's fake VC profile on one side, and Melissa's fake mentor profile on the other. Laura's call came at 2:30 p.m. that afternoon. "And you need to sit down." "I'm already sitting." Melissa Whitmore is Ethan's wife, married June 2021. But that is not the bad news. She took a deep, shaky breath. "They have been doing this for 8 years. I found 12 confirmed victims across 6 different states. $22 million stolen. I closed my eyes. 12 families destroyed. Talk me through the pattern." I demanded. Melissa approaches first as a mentor or consultant. She spends 3 to 6 months building deep trust and gathering financial intelligence. Then Ethan appears with his aggressive VC pitch. The fathers are always brought in as co-signers. The investment terms require collateral, the daughter's property, plus the father's. When the companies fail because Ethan sabotages them, the collateral is forfeit. The money moves offshore through shell companies. By the time the victims realize it's a scam, Ethan and Melissa have disappeared. Give me examples. Sarah Morrison, San Francisco. Father James lost $3.1 million and died of a heart attack. Jennifer Torres, Austin. Father Carlos lost $2.4 million and filed for total bankruptcy. Amanda Richardson, Denver. Father, Robert, lost $4.2 million. Amanda hasn't spoken to her father in 3 years because the guilt completely destroyed their relationship. 12 daughters who had trusted the wrong people. 12 fathers who had lost absolutely everything they had worked their entire lives to build. "Ed, there's something else," Laura said softly. A few victims mentioned a name, Victor Castellano. There is a possible connection to a much larger network operating in 15 states. I looked up at my corkboard. 2 years of marriage, 8 years of destroying innocent families together. "Laura, I need absolutely everything. Victim statements, financial records, property transfers, shell company structures. Every single scrap of evidence you have. You're building a federal case. I spent 27 years as a federal prosecutor. I know exactly how to build a case that breaks people." I stared at the marriage certificate. If they are this organized, multiple fake identities, offshore accounts, shell companies, a repeated pattern of predatory behavior across state lines. This isn't just fraud. What are you thinking? I thought about the massive organized crime cases I had successfully prosecuted. "This is RICO," I said quietly. Federal Conspiracy, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Laura was dead silent. "If you're right, we are talking 20 years in federal prison. Minimum per count. They have destroyed 12 families," I said, my voice cold and hard as iron. "One man is dead. We are going to stop them permanently. If Rachel is their next target, and if they realize you are actively investigating them." "I know. We move incredibly carefully. We build the case airtight before they ever suspect a thing." I glanced at the calendar on my wall. Friday was the official signing meeting. We had 5 days. How fast can you pull together the victim documentation? 72 hours. Maybe less. After we hung up, I sat alone in my quiet house and thought about the 2 ruthless predators currently circling my daughter. Ethan with his practiced handshake and dead eyes. Melissa with her warm smile and carefully constructed, poisonous friendship. They had spent 8 years perfecting their system. Identifying targets, building trust, stealing everything, and disappearing like ghosts. But they had made one catastrophic mistake. They had chosen the wrong family. Richard Fitzgerald's law office occupied the prestigious 19th floor of a glass tower in downtown Portland, with massive floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. By Monday morning, his polished mahogany conference table was entirely buried under a mountain of documents. FBI reports, hostile term sheets, tragic victim statements, and complex financial records. A massive whiteboard on the far wall displayed a detailed timeline in Richard's meticulous handwriting. 8 years, 12 victims, $22 million. I sat across from Richard, with Rachel right beside me. None of us had slept. "All right." Richard tapped his expensive fountain pen against a yellow legal pad. He looked exactly like an elite defense attorney, preparing for the trial of his entire career. Which, in a way, he was. "Let's talk about what we actually have and what we desperately need." "Evidence of wire fraud is rock solid," I stated, pulling up Ethan's emails. Ethan's emails contained documented false representations about Apex Ventures, completely fabricated portfolio companies, and heavily forged financial credentials. That is 18 counts of federal wire fraud, minimum, across 12 different victims. Conspiracy? Richard asked. Also solid. Rachel chimed in, pointing to the blown-up marriage license on the whiteboard. The marriage license proves Ethan and Melissa have been operating as a coordinated unit since at least 2021. Melissa's fake identity as Diana Foster establishes knowing participation in the scheme. Add my covert audio recordings of their coordinated, high-pressure pitch, and we have textbook federal conspiracy. Identity theft is clear, Richard noted. Melissa created a false persona complete with fraudulent business registrations and social media presence. A clear violation of federal identity theft statutes. Rachel leaned forward, crossing her arms. So we have them. Why do we need to set a trap? Richard set down his pen and sighed heavily. Because right now, Rachel, we only have historical evidence, past crimes, past victims, to make a massive RICO case stick to legally prove this is a continuing, highly organized criminal enterprise. We need to catch them in the absolute act. Real-time predicate offenses, I explained, meeting my daughter's eyes. Financial crimes alone aren't enough for the maximum 20-year RICO sentence. We need to prove extortion. We need to prove they are actively willing to destroy people to protect their operation. We need to bait them into admitting their true intentions on tape. Which brings us to the trap, Richard said quietly, glancing at me. Ed proposed it last night. I think it is highly risky, but it is our best shot at putting them away for decades. Walk me through it, Rachel said firmly. I pulled out my legal pad. You text Ethan today. An enthusiastic, happy message. Tell him you finally convinced your stubborn, old-school father to sign the documents. Suggest a celebratory dinner tomorrow night. High-end restaurant, public place. You, me, Ethan, and Melissa, exactly like the first dinner. But this time, Richard interjected, you are wearing a wire. The FBI is providing a covert audio recorder. Your phone will also be on the table as a backup recording device. You are taking mental notes about the entire deal. What is my specific angle? Rachel asked, the eager, slightly naive daughter who successfully manipulated her reluctant father into funding her dream. I said, you will ask specific questions designed to make them reveal their real intentions. Ask what happens if the company struggles. Ask how the collateral process works exactly. Our absolute goal is to get them discussing their actual plan to seize our assets and sabotage the company. And if they try something, Rachel asked quietly, Laura Bennett and her heavily armed FBI tactical team will be exactly 2 blocks away in an unmarked surveillance van. I assured her. If you signal distress, or we observe a clear, imminent crime, they move in immediately and breach the restaurant. Signal distress? How a safe word, Richard explained. Something you would naturally say, but wouldn't normally use. Laura suggested the word actually, repeated twice in a single sentence. I'm actually really excited about this deal. Actually. It sounds completely natural, but it heavily flags extreme danger to the surveillance team. Rachel was quiet for a long moment, processing the immense danger. What do you honestly think they will try, Dad? I don't know, I admitted heavily. 12 families were destroyed, and only Sarah Morrison's father ever pursued a formal complaint. The others were too traumatized, too ashamed, or too terrified to speak out. That strongly suggests Ethan and Melissa are ruthlessly good at silencing their victims. They might use threats, or they might try something significantly more direct. More direct meaning what? Meaning, if they desperately want you compliant, and they need me unquestioning and easily manipulated to sign those collateral papers, they might try to physically incapacitate one of us. Drug a drink, create mass confusion, establish total physical control. I looked at my brilliant, brave daughter, which is exactly why this is so dangerous. We are essentially giving them the perfect opportunity and the strongest motive to strike. Richard leaned back in his leather chair. From a strict legal standpoint, we are on solid ground. Oregon is a one-party consent state for audio recording. You are consenting, so anything captured is perfectly admissible in federal court. The restaurant is a public space, but you are not law enforcement, Rachel. You do not have tactical training. The conference room was dead silent, save for the muted hum of downtown traffic 19 floors below. Rachel stared hard at the whiteboard timeline. 8 years, 12 victims. Sarah Morrison's father dead at 59. Jennifer Torres's father completely bankrupt. They have done this 12 times, Rachel said finally, her voice steady and hard. 12 families completely destroyed, and they were going to make mine number 13. She turned to me, her eyes blazing with determination. Dad, I am not backing down. I can do this, Rachel. This isn't a board meeting negotiation. These are hardened, organized criminals. I know. I have spent 6 months with Melissa. I know exactly how she operates. I have watched Ethan pitch. I know his tells, his rhythms, his high-pressure tactics. I can play this role. She reached across the table and took my hand. You taught me to think strategically. Dad, you taught me to assess risk and protect what truly matters. Stopping them matters. Making sure they never, ever do this to another innocent family matters. I thought about Catherine. I thought about the strong, unwavering values we had instilled in Rachel. Courage, justice, protecting the vulnerable. I had spent 27 years putting vicious predators in federal prison. Now, my own daughter wanted to help me catch 2 more. Are you absolutely sure you can do this? I asked softly. Rachel's jaw set. I've closed 50 term sheets. I can handle 2 pathetic con artists. The restaurant was the kind of ultra-exclusive place where a single entree cost $75 and the wine list required a sommelier. Dim, romantic lighting, crisp white tablecloths. We had secured a large corner booth that Ethan had specifically requested, secluded enough for private, high-stakes conversation, but public enough to seem entirely legitimate. I felt the cold, hard wire taped tightly against my ribs beneath my suit shirt. The FBI had provided it smaller than a breath mint. Transmit E-definition audio in real time to Laura's tactical team 2 blocks away. Across from me, Rachel wore an identical wire hidden inside a custom pendant necklace. To anyone watching, we were just a wealthy father and his successful daughter celebrating a massive business deal with her VC investor and his colleague. Only the 4 of us knew we were walking into a highly orchestrated trap that we had set ourselves. Melissa Deanna, as Rachel still called her, sat to my left, glowing with warm, enthusiastic energy. Ethan sat across from her beside Rachel, his charming, predatory smile never quite reaching his dead eyes. So Friday at 2 p.m., Ethan said smoothly, cutting into his expensive steak. My office, 18th floor, brewery blocks. Bring your ID, Edward. We will need it for the formal notarization of the collateral documents. Of course, I played the role of the eager, clueless father perfectly. I am just so grateful Rachel has someone like you backing her vision. CyberShield is special. Rachel is special. Ethan turned to my daughter, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. Your attorney should have the final revised documents by Thursday morning. The timeline is tight, but we want to close this round before another fund tries to poach you. Rachel nodded, playing her part flawlessly. I am ready. Dad and I both are. Melissa raised her expensive wine glass. To exciting new partnerships, and to amazing fathers who support their daughters' big dreams. We all drank. The wine was an excellent Willamette Valley Pinot Noir that probably cost more than I made in an entire week at Sullivan's Corner. You know, Ethan said casually, turning his shark-like focus to me. You must have done quite well in your corporate days, Edward. That Eastmoreland neighborhood isn't exactly entry-level real estate. I shrugged, playing modestly embarrassed. Careful saving, lucky timing on some old investments. Modest. Ethan's smile widened, revealing teeth. That area has been appreciating 20% annually. Your home alone must be worth, what, $6 million? Here was the moment. The irresistible bait Richard and I had carefully planned. Well, between my late wife's life insurance, some family inheritance, and those lucky early investments. I paused, looking down as if embarrassed by my own wealth. Let's just say I am very comfortable. Maybe $2 million liquid in the trust, give or take. Ethan and Melissa exchanged the briefest, most microscopic glance. It was pure, naked, ravenous greed, exposed for a fraction of a second, before their charming masks snapped firmly back into place. That is wonderful, Edward, Melissa said warmly, though her eyes were now assessing me like a butcher looking at a prime cut of meat. Total financial security at your age, that is the dream. Our entrees arrived. The waiter made a huge production of presenting each plate, grinding fresh pepper, and refilling our water glasses. During the chaotic flurry of activity, I saw it. Melissa's left hand casually reached across the table toward the bread basket. It was a completely natural movement, except her right hand, the one hidden beneath her napkin, passed swiftly over my wineglass. A quick, practiced tilt of her wrist. Something small dropped silently into the dark red liquid. She withdrew her hand smoothly, picked up a bread roll, and smiled brightly at something Ethan was saying. My heart hammered aggressively against the wire on my chest. 27 years as a federal prosecutor, I had read countless case files about this exact tactic. Rohypnol, GHB powerful sedatives used to completely incapacitate high-value targets. Colorless, tasteless, entirely dissolved in wine within seconds. They were trying to drug me. The stakes had just skyrocketed from financial fraud to attempted murder. I kept my expression completely neutral, deliberately cutting into my grilled salmon as if nothing had happened. Across the table, Rachel's eyes met mine. She had seen it too, her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Oh, clumsy me," Rachel suddenly gasped, knocking her heavy linen napkin to the floor. "Dad, can you help?" We both bent down instantly, completely breaking the line of sight from Ethan and Melissa. "She drugged your glass," Rachel whispered, her voice barely audible over the restaurant noise. "I'm switching them," I nodded. Once. Sharply we straightened up. Rachel immediately reached for the large water pitcher in the center of the table, creating motion and distraction. "Let me pour everyone more water." In the chaotic movement, hands and glasses shifted. Rachel's hand passed smoothly over mine. It was a flawless sleight of hand. When the motion finally stopped, my original tainted wine glass sat exactly where hers had been. The poisoned glass now sat safely in front of my daughter, who would absolutely not take a single sip from it. "Thank you, sweetheart." I lifted my new glass, Rachel's clean one, and took a deliberate, long sip. Melissa watched me intently, waiting. 20 minutes later, right on schedule for Rohypnol's aggressive onset, I leaned back in the booth and let my words slur just slightly. "Wow, this wine is incredibly strong, Edward. Are you feeling all right?" Melissa's voice dripped with thick, false concern. I blinked heavily, shaking my head as if trying to clear a deep fog. "I'm fine. Must have eaten too fast, or maybe I'm just not used to drinking wines this good anymore." I forced a sloppy, good-natured laugh and took another sip. "Actually, I feel fine now." Deep, profound frustration flickered across Melissa's face. Just for a second, but it was just long enough for Rachel's hidden wire to catch it perfectly on video. The rest of the dinner proceeded exactly as planned. Ethan enthusiastically discussed CyberShield's aggressive growth projections. Melissa relentlessly praised Rachel's leadership. I played the proud, slightly tipsy father, who had maybe had one glass too many, but was recovering fine. All the while, the tainted wine glass sat completely untouched in front of Rachel. A silent, deadly piece of evidence of attempted murder, just waiting to be collected. When dinner ended, Rachel made a brilliant show of cleaning up a spilled napkin, quietly wrapping the tainted wine glass inside it, and dropping everything seamlessly into her large designer purse. I saw her hand move to the edge of the tablecloth near where my original glass had been, folding a corner of the fabric into her bag as well to capture any spilled residue. Evidence secured, chain of custody meticulously maintained. The FBI would have everything they needed. Outside, we said our goodbyes in the rain. Ethan shook my hand aggressively. "Friday, 2 p.m. Do not be late, Edward. I wouldn't miss it for the world," I promised, looking him dead in the eyes. They drove away in their sleek Tesla. Rachel and I stood in the pouring rain until their taillights vanished. Then she pulled out her phone and sent a secure text to Laura Bennett. "Package secured. Dad is safe." Wednesday morning, Laura called me at 6:30 a.m. Ed. The crime lab ran the glass and the fabric swab overnight. Her voice was razor-thin, tight with intense, barely contained fury. Flunitrazepam, 2.5 milligrams. It was enough to completely incapacitate a full-grown adult male for hours. Combined with the heavy alcohol you were drinking, it easily could have been fatal. I sat at the dark counter of Sullivan's Corner and felt 27 years of prosecutorial instinct crystallize into cold, absolute certainty. Melissa Whitmore's fingerprints. They are perfectly preserved on the glass stem. We have her. Wire fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, interstate racketeering, and now we have them for attempted murder, I said quietly into the phone. Tomorrow we finish this. Thursday morning, we met at a secure FBI field office in Northeast Portland. It was an unmarked, brutalist concrete building that could have been any boring corporate park, except for the heavily armed federal guards at the entrance and the windowless, secure conference rooms inside. Laura Bennett stood at the head of a metal table covered in advanced tactical surveillance equipment. Microphones no bigger than a shirt button, recording devices disguised as high-end pens, smartwatches, and phone accessories. A panic button that looked exactly like a standard car key fob. Day 1, Laura announced, looking at Rachel. We make absolutely sure the technology doesn't fail you. Rachel picked up one of the tiny microphones, turning it over in her trembling fingers. This is so much smaller than the one I wore to dinner. That was consumer grade. This is what we use for high-risk undercover operations, Laura explained, taking the mic and demonstrating how to clip it seamlessly inside a blazer lapel. It is totally invisible, even if someone is standing 2 feet away. It transmits high-definition audio in real time to our surveillance van. The battery life is 4 hours. The signing meeting won't last 4 hours, I noted. No, Laura agreed grimly, but we always plan for the absolute worst-case scenario. For the next 2 grueling hours, Rachel practiced, walking, sitting, gesturing wildly, making sure the microphone stayed perfectly hidden and the audio remained crystal clear. I watched from the glass observation room, listening through heavy headphones, as my daughter's voice came through with terrifying clarity. Laura rigorously drilled her on the distress signals. Your primary distress phrase is, "I'd like to call my lawyer," Laura instructed. If you hit the panic button on the key fob once, the SWAT team deploys and breaches the room in 90 seconds. If Edward scratches his right ear twice, that is the abort mission signal. We pull you out immediately. What if Ethan asks to see my phone? Rachel asked, her voice shaking slightly. The recording app looks exactly like a standard clock widget. He won't notice a thing. Laura's expression softened, but her tone was deadly serious. But Rachel, listen to me carefully. If at any point you feel genuinely unsafe, you use the panic button immediately. Your pride is not worth your life. Friday morning brought the final tactical briefing. 6 massive federal agents in full black tactical gear filled the conference room. This was Laura's SWAT team, heavy body armor, Kevlar helmets, and assault weapons I recognized from my old prosecutorial days. These weren't the agents who quietly investigated white-collar tax fraud. These were the door kickers, the ones who breached strongholds and violently neutralized threats. Brewery blocks, 1800 block Northwest 13th, Laura said, pulling up the high-resolution building schematics on a large digital screen. 18 floors, Suite 1804, 2 main exits, the lobby elevator bank, and the fire stairs on the east side. One of the SWAT agents' tours, according to the name tape on his heavy vest, stepped forward and pointed aggressively at the floor plan. They have floor-to-ceiling glass walls here. If we see a weapon or an imminent, violent threat, we go loud and breach the glass immediately. Otherwise, we hold position in the hall and wait for the signal. What is the ultimate trigger signal? Rachel asked. You say the safe phrase, Torres replied flatly, or you press the panic button, or we lose audio contact for more than 15 seconds and cannot re-establish visual contact. Where will you be? Exactly 2 blocks away, parked at Northwest 11th and Everett. The van looks like a generic plumbing contractor. We will also have 2 plainclothes agents already inside the building. One in the main lobby, one holding the 17th floor stairwell. You are completely covered. I had prosecuted massive cartel cases with SWAT support before. I knew exactly how fast these men could move, and how overwhelmingly terrifying their presence was when they breached a room. But knowing my only daughter would be trapped in a room with 2 desperate, violent criminals while we waited for the precise legal moment to intervene. That was a completely different kind of terror. What if he runs? I asked the room. Then he runs directly into us, Torres said simply, adjusting his vest. Nobody gets out of that building once we are deployed. Saturday, we held our final legal prep at Richard's office. The conference table looked like a literal war room. The Las Vegas marriage license was blown up to poster size. The tragic victim list, 12 names with dates and massive stolen amounts. The hospital toxicology report, with Melissa's fingerprints circled in bright red marker. Audio files queued up on a laptop, ready to play. This is exactly how you will present the evidence, Richard said, handing me a heavy leather portfolio. Order matters, Edward. You start with the marriage license. That immediately establishes the conspiracy and breaks their reality. Then the victim pattern, that establishes the RICO enterprise. Then the toxicology report, that proves their violent intent. Then the audio recordings, let them hang themselves with their own words. I reviewed each document slowly. My prosecutor's brain was automatically organizing the narrative, pushing the fear away. Hook, evidence, pattern, conclusion. I had done this 289 times before in a courtroom. But never with my daughter as the bait. When do I finally reveal my identity? I asked Richard. After Rachel's initial questions, Richard instructed. Let her establish on tape that she knows something is legally wrong with the deal. Let Ethan try to force her to sign. Then, you drop the hammer. You take total control of the room. I looked at Rachel. She was pale, but her eyes were fierce. It was time to go hunting. Friday at 2 p.m. The fake office of Apex Ventures on the 18th floor of the brewery blocks was an absolute masterpiece of corporate theater. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls, minimalist modern furniture, and sweeping, expensive views of the Portland skyline. Ethan Whitmore sat at the head of a massive, polished glass conference table, looking every inch the elite venture capitalist. Melissa, still aggressively playing the role of Diana Foster, sat to his right, her laptop open, projecting an aura of eager, supportive mentorship. Rachel and I sat across from them. The wire taped to my ribs felt heavy and cold. I knew that 2 blocks away, Laura Bennett and an entire, heavily armed SWAT team were listening to every single breath we took. Here are the final revised documents, Ethan said smoothly, sliding a thick stack of legal paper across the glass table. The term sheet, the equity transfer agreement, and the personal collateral guarantees for both the South Waterfront condo and the East Moreland property. He handed me a sleek, expensive silver pen. Edward, we just need your signature on page 42 to formally secure the collateral. Once you sign, the $2.5 million hits Rachel's corporate account by Monday morning. I didn't take the pen. I let it sit on the glass table. I have a few final questions. Ethan, Rachel said, her voice perfectly steady. She was playing her part flawlessly. I was reviewing the drag-along provisions in Section 4. It explicitly states that if Apex Ventures decides to liquidate its position, I am legally forced to sell my entire company, regardless of the valuation. Is that correct? Ethan offered a reassuring, patronizing smile. Rachel, that is just standard boilerplate VC language. It is purely designed to protect our investors in extreme, worst-case scenarios. We have absolutely no intention of selling Cyber Shield. And the collateral clause, Rachel pressed, tapping the paper. If the company misses its quarterly revenue targets by even 5%, this clause gives Apex the immediate right to seize both my condo and my father's home to recoup the investment. That seems incredibly aggressive. It's a high-risk investment, Rachel, Melissa chimed in, leaning forward with her warm, fake smile. The board just needs to know you have real skin in the game. It's just a formality. We believe in you. But hypothetically, I spoke up, my voice dropping into the cold, authoritative cadence I used in federal court. If the company fails, you take both of our homes, instantly, leaving us with absolutely nothing. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly, annoyed by the old cafe owner questioning his authority. Hypothetically, Edward, yes, but that won't happen, like it didn't happen to Sarah Morrison in San Francisco. I asked quietly. The temperature in the glass conference room plummeted to absolute zero. Ethan froze completely. The pen in his hand slipped, clattering loudly onto the glass table. Melissa's warm smile instantly vanished, replaced by a mask of sheer unadulterated panic. I don't know who that is, Ethan stammered, his charismatic facade cracking instantly. Really? I reached down and pulled the heavy leather portfolio from my briefcase. I slammed it down onto the glass table. The loud smack echoed in the silent room. I flipped the portfolio open to the first page. The blown-up Clark County marriage license. How about Melissa Whitmore? I asked, staring dead into Melissa's terrified eyes. Do you know her, Ethan? Because according to this Nevada marriage certificate, she has been your legal wife since June 2021. All the color violently drained from Ethan's face. He looked like he had just been punched in the stomach. Edward, I think there is a massive misunderstanding here. Shut up, I snapped, my voice ringing with absolute authority. I flipped to the second page, the massive whiteboard timeline, 12 victims, 6 different states, $22 million stolen. Jennifer Torres, Amanda Richardson, you run the exact same predatory playbook every single time. Melissa builds the trust, you bring the fake money, you force the fathers to put up the collateral, and then you completely destroy the company from the inside and seize the assets. Ethan pushed his chair back, his eyes darting frantically toward the glass doors. He was trapped. You're insane, Melissa hissed, her voice trembling with rage. You are just a pathetic old man making coffee. You have absolutely no proof of any of this. You're right, I said calmly. I do make excellent coffee, but before I opened that cafe, I spent 27 years as an assistant United States attorney for the federal government. I prosecuted 289 federal cases. I have put smarter, more ruthless men than your husband in federal penitentiaries for the rest of their natural lives. Ethan's jaw literally dropped. The realization hit him like a freight train. He hadn't just targeted the wrong father. He had targeted a federal predator. I flipped to the final page in the portfolio, the hospital toxicology report, with Melissa's fingerprints circled in bright red. Flunitrazepam, I read aloud, watching Melissa flinch violently. 2.5 milligrams, slipped directly into my wineglass at dinner on Tuesday. I didn't drink it, Melissa. Rachel brilliantly switched the glasses. The FBI crime lab pulled your flawless fingerprints off the stem of the glass. FBI? Ethan choked out the word, sheer terror gripping his throat. Yes, Ethan, Rachel said, her voice cold and powerful. I'm actually really excited about this deal, actually. The safe word. 10 seconds later, the world exploded. The heavy glass doors of the conference room were violently smashed inward. The deafening sound of shattering glass filled the air as 6 heavily armed federal SWAT agents poured into the room, their assault rifles raised, tactical lights blinding the room. FBI, get on the ground, show me your hands! Agent Torres hit Ethan so hard the venture capitalist flew backward over his expensive chair, crashing onto the floor. Before Ethan could even process what was happening, Torres had a knee buried deep in his spine and heavy steel handcuffs ratcheting violently around his wrists. Melissa screamed, trying to scramble backward away from the table, but a female SWAT agent grabbed her by the shoulder, spun her around, and slammed her face first into the glass wall. The cold click of handcuffs echoed loudly over Melissa's hysterical sobbing. Laura Bennett walked calmly through the shattered glass doors, wearing a tactical vest over her FBI windbreaker. She looked down at Ethan, who was currently whimpering on the floor, his nose bleeding onto the expensive carpet. Ethan Morgan, also known as Ethan Whitmore, Laura announced loudly, reading from a federal warrant. You are under arrest for 18 counts of federal wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, conspiracy, and violations of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. You are also both under arrest for the attempted murder of a former federal prosecutor. Ethan looked up at me from the floor, his eyes wide with absolute, devastating defeat. The arrogant, slick predator was completely gone. He was just a pathetic, terrified criminal realizing his entire life was over. You get absolutely nothing, Ethan, I said, looking down at him with pure disgust. Enjoy federal prison. They dragged Ethan and Melissa out of the shattered office. The silence that followed was deafening. Laura walked over to Rachel and helped her unclip the wire from her blazer. You did incredible, Rachel, absolutely flawless execution. Rachel let out a long, shaky exhale, the adrenaline finally leaving her body. She looked at the fake VC term sheet still sitting on the glass table, then looked up at me. We stopped them, Dad, she whispered. I pulled my brilliant, brave daughter into a tight hug. Yes, we did, sweetheart. We stopped them for good. It has been 6 months since the FBI raided the fake offices of Apex Ventures. The federal RICO case against Ethan and Melissa Morgan was completely airtight. Faced with the overwhelming mountain of forensic evidence, the audio recordings, and the attempted murder charge, they didn't even try to take it to trial. They both plead guilty. Ethan was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Melissa received 20 years. More importantly, the FBI was able to trace and freeze the offshore shell accounts. The $22 million they had stolen over 8 years was slowly being returned to the 12 devastated families. I personally called Sarah Morrison to tell her the news. She cried on the phone for an hour. As for me, I am exactly where I want to be. It was a quiet Sunday morning in Portland. The rain was gently tapping against the windows of Sullivan's Corner. I was standing behind the espresso machine, pouring a perfectly layered latte, when the front bell chimed. Rachel walked in. She looked completely relaxed, wearing a comfortable sweater, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder. Cyber Shield had just closed a massive, entirely legitimate Series A funding round with a reputable firm in Seattle. She had done it entirely on her own. She walked up to the counter and smiled. "Morning. Dad, the usual?" "Coming right up," I smiled back, handing her the warm cup. She took a sip, closed her eyes, and sighed happily. "You know, you could have gone back to the DA's office after this. They would have taken you back in a heartbeat." "I know," I said, wiping down the counter. "But I have already put enough bad guys away for one lifetime. Besides, someone has to make sure the cinnamon rolls are baked right." I looked up at the chalkboard menu. "Life's too short for bad coffee." Catherine's handwriting. I knew she was watching us, and I knew she was incredibly proud.